Welcome back to another UNC Tar Heels basketball recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're watching us on our growing YouTube channel, that is called Tar Heel Illustrated. I am THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our director of basketball recruiting, Mr. David Sisk, longtime AAU, college, and high school coach. And this past weekend, you were the traveler, the THI traveler. You were all over the place. You were in Georgia at an event, and you were at two events in Alabama over a 4-day span. Packed a lot in 4 days of what you saw, made some pretty good contacts, got to see some important players, and learn a lot, kind of monitoring Hubert Davis. We're going to talk about how Hubert, quote unquote, works the room. We're going to get into all that. But let's start off, David, before we get into four players that we're going to hit on. Just overall, your impressions finally getting out, and I know you went to an event in Indiana back in April, I guess it was, but these kind of events, these are big time events, all kinds of craziness going on with the coaches there. How was it? How did it feel to just kind of be back to normal?
Well, it was back to the real world. Getting up at 6:30 in the morning, getting to the gym at 8, staying at 11:30 at night, having a publisher wanting you to crank out stories in the midst of it and post and do podcasts and trying to get all that done and all the networking that goes with it. You're watching players. We were out, I guess, Friday night after we got done. I wouldn't have normally went, but that late because I wanted to get up Saturday, but there were just some of the guys that basically it was just a meeting Friday night about, the future things, NIL, how that's going to work, how really there wasn't a whole lot said about basketball. It's just such a changing environment in college athletics and college basketball. And, so there were some heavy hitters at that thing, about 4 or 5 people. And, it was just one of those where I threw the names out. I said, well, I can't miss this one. Seeing college coaches, meeting new ones, catching up with old ones I've not seen in a while. It's fun. Even guys that I wouldn't be covering right now in recruiting. And you see some kid and you go, I like him. He's pretty good. And you look down, he might have one offer. It might be a D2. So I like to watch all these kids that kind of break out and try to keep up with them and see how many offers they're going to get this week and the rest of the month. So all that's I enjoy it. All that's really fun. Doesn't help my golf game much, but I enjoy it. It's a good break.
We're going to get into the 4 players here in just a minute. You said right before we hit the record button about watching Hubert Davis work the room. I'm just kind of curious. You had a chance to talk to Hubert a little bit, and Brad Frederickson, I guess you kind of knew a little bit in the past. You sent a few guys to play for him when he was an assistant at Vanderbilt. What was your take on just sort of seeing Hubert in that environment as a head coach for the first time?
Well, number one, I spoke to Hubert briefly twice, and just as cordial and friendly and polite as he could be, and just and what you see all the recruits say, when you meet him is exactly what you get, in a one-on-one. Just very professional. There's a lot to like there. Just as far as watching them work, for me, with everything that I had on my plate at these events, it made it easy because I didn't have to chase him around all over the gym. Now, I'm going to tell you how a lot of these things work. You had events going on, like you said, besides those 3. You had another one going on downtown Atlanta at the World Congress Center, which I didn't tell you about because I didn't want to have to go downtown. But there wasn't anybody there anyway that North Carolina would have been looking at. And then you've got, Derek Lively was playing in the event, Pennsylvania. You had, there
was stuff going on in New Jersey as well, right?
Yeah, Midwest. I mean, they were all over the place. But, you had – what happened is you would have some of the Nike teams basically playing in warm-up events because Peach Jam starts Tuesday, which we're doing this on Monday nights. Peach Jam starts tomorrow. And so they're just kind of warm up events to get ready. But normally, there might be coaches out in different places. But let's say let's say the Under Armour event, there was more North Carolina players at the Under Armour event than the Adidas event. So at Under Armour, it's a huge concourse there, huge arena. They've got 12 courts going on in there. So you'll have coaches just all over the place. You'll have one coach at one place. There's assistant coach will be at another. They're split up there. And you're just kind of following them around. And one of the big things, it's almost like paparazzi. You're following guys around just to see that you can tweet that, Hubert Davis is watching Andrew Young play Andrew Jones. I was in Atlanta, not Andrew Young, but watching Andrew Jones play on court too. Yeah. Catch and shoot, no defense.
That's right. There you go.
Doesn't like to pass.
Absolutely.
But with Hubert, it was easy because they could know exactly who they're going after. And I made this point. In between Will Shaver and Isaac Trout, they just walked right past Jarris Walker's court. When he was playing, didn't even look to take a look over there. Just went from one court to another. And I'm like, man, this is great. They go in packs. It's never one coach here and one coach there. They're always together. They're not looking around and looking at, fishing around and all that. They know exactly who they want to look at, and they go together. One thing I've noticed too, a lot of these things, when you go to these events, and these coaches haven't been out there in these circles, they haven't seen each other in 2 years. And it's like a big just get together. It's just to get away. Just get away from a wife and hobnob for a couple of days. They don't do that. Hubert might walk from one to another one. Somebody would stop him, or he'd see somebody and would talk for a second. But they didn't go jump on the bleacher somewhere and not watch a game and just sit around and shoot the bull and laugh. It was none of that. It was him and Frederick or him and Sean May. And they were together and they were watching a game. And there wasn't a lot of fraternizing or anything like that. So very detailed, very detail-oriented, very focused on who and what they were looking at.
Okay, 4 players that you saw that are very relevant to Carolina's recruiting. 2 of them have committed. Will Shaver and then Jalen Washington did so on Friday, and you were all over that for a few days leading up to it. And you also saw Tyler Nickel and Isaac Trout. Let's go ahead and start quickly with Will Shaver. You had a chance to spend some time with him, did an interview. We put up a story. What was your take from Will Shaver?
Here's my take on Will Shaver. It's more of an old school kind of take. I remember when basketball used to be about development. And so you would sign a kid and you look at him and you go, by the time he's going to develop and by the time he's a junior, he'll be a pretty good player. He'll be good. He'll end up having a good career. He'll be good as an upperclassman, junior and senior. And now it's almost like, and I wish we'd get away from this, it's almost like, well, this kid can't come in and play next year. And if he can't step right in and be a major contributor and a starter as a freshman, it's almost like he's a flop. It's almost like one and done or nothing. And that's almost what college basketball has gotten back to, or has gone to, rather. I would like to see it go back to where players go and players develop and you see them getting better each year. And that used to be how players were rated. I remember when I first started coaching in the 90s, and back then it was Bob Gibbons and Clark Francis, and that was about it. And this may have been Bob Gibbons that I asked, but I'm not sure. And we're talking 1993, 1994. I'm not going to it could have been Gibbons. But anyway, I said, what's the difference in a 5-star and a 4-star? He said a 5-star is a guy that's going to come in and start as a freshman. A 4-star is a kid that's going to start as a sophomore, and a 3-star is a kid that's going to start as a junior. And that's how they ranked them. So and so you never really even thought about that. You think now you can be a 4-star and be a top 30 player, top 35 player, and be a one and done. A 4-star at that time meant, hey, this kid probably won't go anywhere and start as a freshman. So you had that development, if that makes sense. So that's what I see from Will Shaver. Will, my big thing right now is I'm not sure what he is on the court. Off the court, he's incredible, man. He is you talk about a grounded young man. He is phenomenal. On the court, it's kind of weird because he's got the frame a Garrison Brooks, somebody like that. He's about 235 now, but he's got a big frame. You know, he looks like that 245, 250 pound kid that's about 6'10" kind of frame, but he likes to play out on the floor. And he really doesn't stretch the floor. He made some threes in the third and final game that we saw him, but he didn't make anything, made 1 3 maybe in the first 2 games. So he didn't look to me like a kid that could stretch the floor out to the 3-point line. But he looked more like a mid-range, maybe out to about 15, 17 feet. I think he's got to consistently make that 3 from outside. I don't know to be able to stretch. I just don't know that he's going to be quick enough to just beat people off the dribble. He's not going to be that kind of kid. He could end up, and like I said, we're going to have to see, but he could end up being that player that plays with his back to the bucket down on the block, although that's not his game. I think when he gets to North Carolina, they've got to figure that out, what he's going to be best at, and then kind of fit him into that role. And it may take a while. I don't know that you do that in 1 year.
Does he look uncomfortable out there?
No, he doesn't look uncomfortable. There's just things that you can do better than others. And what I mean by that is he wants to play outside, and he's, like I said, he's 6'10", 6'11", and he looks like a 250, 260-pound kid, although he weighs 235. Big frame, big boned, what we used to call it, what my mom would call it, big boned, And so, like I said, his skill level, what he likes to do and what his body says he should be able to do is 2 different things. So, like I said, they'll have an idea when he gets there, and then they'll try to mold him into what he needs to be.
What did you like about his game that you really like? You think, okay, he goes to college next year. Maybe he's not going to be a 20-minute-a-game guy, but in what area can you envision him helping a UNC program as a freshman?
I think depth as a freshman, because like I said, he's got the body to go in there and bang and be physical on the block. He's a big, strong kid. I think he'll be able to rebound. I think he'll be and he's got good feet. He's got a good drop step. So the one thing I did notice, and he likes to go, if he's on the right block, he likes to go back to the middle. So when you do that, and if I drop step back to my right shoulder over here, I should finish with my left hand away from the defender. We got company. He likes to go back with his right hand back into the defense. Now, one thing I noticed in the game I saw him do it, he scored, but he is not big enough. He's not going to be able to do that in college. Now, he can do it right now in high school, but you're not going to get through ACC type big men, putting the ball right back. And he can't elevate over them. He plays more on the ground. He's going to have more of an old man's game. So that's kind of, what
about getting a guy on his hip? Did you see much of that? Because a lot of times I know they play a lot against each other now with the AAU stuff, but I go back to what I said about Jalen Washington. Sometimes guys don't have to do things on a regular basis until they get to college that they need to do. And one of them is big men learning how to get a defender on their hip to get a little bit of separation. Yeah.
I just noticed that he's got good feet when he could do that. He kind of, he spins. It's not a deal is a little quicker than doing it and what you think you would do. It's just not like he overpowers a guy. He spins a little bit more. I think probably as one thing that they're going to do as he gets to North Carolina, and he's going to be at IMG next year. I don't even know if that's come out or not yet, but so they're going to work down there on that, and I expect that you'll see some improvements there. And then when you get into college where he's just overpowering people and he can turn and get them on his hip. So
that's a good thing
he's going to have to work on.
That's a good move for him. Okay, Jalen Washington, he committed on Friday. Like I said, you were all over that for a couple of days leading up to it. So you had a chance to spend some time with him too. Really impressive kid from my vantage point, reading the interview, and it's the second one you've done with him about the last 3.5 weeks or so. So what was your take on Jalen Washington?
A kid that wanted to go to North Carolina. And he pretty much said that. And I got a call, the call I got Wednesday night that he was going to do this. Like I said, was basically an individual that I know close to Purdue. And he told me, he basically made it sound like, hey, that's just, that's what they wanted to do. And, he pretty well said that. Well, he did say it. He said, no, I want to be there. Well, I like him. All these guys that Hubert gets or North Carolina gets are likable kids. There's not a diva in the group. So he's going to be, I think, a great addition. A kid that's probably going to end up being a 5-star player. And it's like I said, when you take him, you take the last couple of guys they've signed, like Trimble, Garcia, Jalen Washington. These are guys that are going to play, could have played at North Carolina in any era on any of those great teams. There's those kind of players. So I'm very interested to see his numbers and stat lines from Peach Jam here in the next 2 weeks.
And looking at what he said, and he mentioned Stanford too, as one of the places he did take an official.
That tells you he's a smart kid.
Yeah, well, he's thinking beyond basketball. So what was it about North Carolina beyond basketball that also appealed? Was Carolina just sort of the academic package, the social package, the cultural package, and the basketball package? It had more of that than anybody else?
I wish I'd have gone back, and when I played and you've done it, you interview somebody, when you play back the interview and you're putting it on paper, you're going, man, I wish I
should have asked this question.
Yeah. And
many times.
He talked about preparing him, but kind of after North Carolina. And I wish I had the exact wording. It doesn't come to my mind. But basically what they could provide afterwards. And there wasn't any, I would love to go back and say, okay, exactly what was it?
Yeah.
That you see afterwards. But yeah, it looked like the whole thing. And I think we know that. I think you go to North Carolina, there's going to be the basketball. There's going to be it's a public Ivy. You've got all the support in the world, national fan base. He grew up, let's face it, he grew up in Chicago, a North Carolina fan. I'm doing an article now on another site on Jacoby Walter, who's a top 50 player in 2023. And he told me, he lives in Dallas. Now, he's not had contact from North Carolina, but he told me, when we're talking about teams growing up, he said, I like Duke and I like Kentucky and I like North Carolina. North Carolina was the second team he mentioned. He said, I like the colors. I pulled from North Carolina because I like the colors. And all these kids will tell you, man, I saw Duke and Carolina play on TV and I was hooked. And there's so many reasons.
So when you look ahead to next year, when he's a freshman in the 22-23 season, how does he help the Tar Heels right away?
I think he's that guy at that 4 spot, and now who knows? And we've already said this in a previous podcast when we talked. It's a win-win with Dawson Garcia. If he's there 1 year and he goes pro, that means he had a heck of a year next year.
Yeah.
Because we're looking to the future. But if he's there 2 years, well, man, you get 2 years of Dawson Garcia. That's a pretty good deal. So there's not a bad option in there. But I think I would think Dawson Garcia is going to be there 1 year probably, and then move on. And then you've got Jalen Washington coming in right behind him. But I've said this too. Let's say Dawson Garcia doesn't, he stays there 2 years. I think Dawson Garcia can play the 5 too. And then Jalen could go into the 4. Jalen's not, he's in that 6'8" to 6'9" range. He's not a kid you look at and go, no, he's pretty tall. Shoes on, he might be 6'10" and a half, 6'11". He's not. He's a good 6'9". He's got a good frame to him. He's not got a muscular frame yet, but he's not thin either. But he's got a nice build, and he gets in that weight room. He's going to be a different looking kid. I can see him carrying, more weight and end up really having a chiseled body. He just looks like to me like when he gets in the weight room, he is going to be a strong kid that can carry muscle.
Yeah, he can handle more weight without affecting anything else, basically.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's the natural. You look at him; he's that natural force. So I mean, they got the guy they wanted, and we ask all these guys, hey, is it important, that Hubert offers you and likes you, because the new role of that 4 stretching out, that's the difference now in the offense. That's such a primary part of what Hubert wants to do. So, he comes along with it.
Staying on Jalen, but deviating a little bit, going back to the Dawson Garcia thing, if he does play a second year in North Carolina, I think there's a good chance that happens because of stock, and he could see the value in Armando Bacot's 3rd year in college this year, what that might be able to do for him, and see a similar thing for himself. But didn't you learn on this trip that Hubert's not completely opposed to a 5 stepping away as well?
Yeah.
So Dawson Garcia and Jalen Washington can coexist at the same time if that comes to fruition.
Yeah, Will Shaver told me that every kid that I talk to that they've got, I'm hitting up, and you've noticed this. I'm hitting up. What's Hubert telling you about offensive philosophy? What's he wanting to do? And I've talked to so many of them now that it's obvious. I think I could give a tutorial on it. He's wanting kids. He's wanting rather to step out with that 4 or 5 on the block. But Will Shaver told me, he said, Coach Davis says he wasn't opposed to having a 4 and 5 could both step out. So you're basically playing a 5 out. So, we wondered, we said, okay, what's Will Shaver's role? We're not sure exactly who's Will Shaver. We know what Jalen Washington is. He comes in. He is tailor-made. He comes in ready.
You got a chance to watch Tyler Nickel a couple of times. What were your thoughts?
Tyler is one of these kids, and I want to make sure I say this right, but sometimes you have kids in high school, and then you see them out in AAU, and they're still good, but they have to take on a different identity. Whereas you look, and I was telling you who I was telling this to, but we were watching him play the Midwest basketball club with Reed Shepard and Gabe Cupps. And I remember telling a guy was watching him play from the Midwest, he really didn't know much about Nickel. And I said, he's going to be the all-time leading scorer in Virginia. Even if he has an off year next year and averages 25 points a game, he's still going to, break it. So, because he's averaging about 40 right now. And the guy didn't know it. I said that to say this. In high school, I can see him playing against players. He's a little bit bigger and stronger and faster and better. And, he can just light it up. The ball's in his hands a lot. He gets a lot of touches. Whereas you take him in the AAU game, and he's got Jaden Epps, he's got others on that team, and you've got good players. Team loaded Virginia is very good. And, the ball gets distributed, and you're kind of fitting into that role, and, the touches are equal. So I think really trying to just change from a ball-centric type of player there to one that's kind of fitting into the system. And I think that's more like you're going to see at North Carolina. The 40-point-a-game guy you're seeing in high school, and I said at North Carolina, don't read into that. I should have said into college, you know. If he did go to North Carolina or he went Virginia Tech or somewhere like that in the ACC, you're going to see more of the kid, I think, that played with Team Loaded that's got a role and not a scorer. He didn't look to me and who knows? You're watching a guy for 2 or 3 games. You don't really know. You know, you need to see him more in July and watch him on several different occasions. But he made – I know his three-point shooting wasn't necessarily a high percentage. So he's athletic. He's okay. He's not overly athletic. Yeah, average athleticism. He has a good build. I think he's a legit 3. I don't know that he's going to be – he plays good team defense. He's not going to get up and smother a kid out in the open floor or pick him or whatever. He's not going to be able to guard a shooting guard or 2 per se, especially a quick one. Yeah, I think he's a 3. And right now, maybe a guy that kind of fits into his system a little bit more instead of a prolific scorer like he's been built to be so far.
So when you're watching him, did you find yourself, and I know you also cover recruiting for Kentucky, do you find yourself sometimes trying to see what the staff saw in a guy? Because Hubert saw him 2 weeks ago and then often. So when you're watching, you say, okay,
he saw him against high school. Remember that. He saw him against high school teams.
That's right. That was that high school event up in DeMatha.
Yeah. Well,
his was in North Carolina.
Yeah. Bermuda Run. And so, like I said, I could see him. He's a good-looking kid. You look at him and you go, I mean, this guy will be able to play basketball. He looks like a basketball player. He's like I said, he's got good athleticism. He's 6'6", 6'5", 6'6". He's got a good body. He can run. He's there's a lot to like there. So yeah, I could see that. While you could go see him at a high school event and go, God, we got to get on this guy.
Well, you said about Will Shaver, maybe a little bit more of a throwback in the sense that in an era where a guy would come in, kind of learn, play a little bit more as a sophomore and freshman, then start as junior. You kind of look at Nickel as maybe a kid who would follow a similar type pattern.
I think Nickel has more of a chance to show, hey, this is who I am than Will Shaver does right now. And here's what I'm saying. The next event they go to, there's another live period starting this week. I don't see any – well, there's a possibility, let me put it that way, that he could go in and play and have some great games and end up scoring 20 points in some games. And you're all of a sudden you're going, okay, this is what everybody sees. And, he's not the only kid like that. We were looking at some others that are very highly rated who just had some off games making shots, and it happens. I mean, I basically saw him from 5 or 6 o'clock Friday afternoon until 5 or 6 o'clock Saturday afternoon, in 3 games in 24 hours. And that's why I told somebody that they were talking about a player. And I said, well, fortunately, when he goes to college, he won't have to play 3 games over a weekend. So you get tired, your legs go. And he could just had a weekend where you have him where you don't shoot it as well as you normally do. So, like I said, he's a kid. Shaver, I've got a pretty good idea on that one. I think most people do. But, man, I just want to see more of Tyler Nickel and see if he can turn it on.
You got to see Isaac Trout.
Yeah.
Who just recently took his official visit and had an adventure getting back home to the Omaha area. So what did you see from him that you liked, and how would you evaluate his game based on the limited time that you saw him?
I loved Isaac Trout. Totally different than what I thought. And the last game I saw him Thursday night, it was weird. Well, it wasn't weird. It was pretty neat. You had Hubert Davis and Coach Frederick on one side of the court, And directly across from him was Will Shaver in his North Carolina gear on the other side, almost facing each other. And totally different, I thought. And I'm going to be honest. This may not be politically correct to say it, but you see a white kid from the Midwest, 6'7", that steps out on the floor, and you think, shooter, stretch guy, shooter. He is anything but that. He is a guy, he is rugged. That would be my word for Isaac Trout, rugged. He's got a great body, 6'8", just a kind of a strong looking, thicker frame. And man, he goes and hunts contact. He is looking for somebody to run into or run over or to draw a foul from. Good footwork in a post. He's not a guy that's going to break down necessarily a defender and get to the rim with a bunch of fancy moves, but he is a guy that's going to put his head down and get to the rim and go through somebody's chest. And he had good footwork in a post. A lot of my fakes. He could put his back to the bucket, look like Kevin McHale at times, with fakes and shot fakes and up and unders and double drops where he goes one way and turns and fakes one way and turns and goes the other one. Very clever guy in there. So
does he play through contact well?
Oh man, yes. Strong kid, looks for it strong. Yes, he is a rugged individual. I would say, but I wouldn't think that there's 10 or 15 players in the country in all of college in all of high school basketball in the entire United States that it would be stronger in a lane than he would be.
So in reading some of the comments on our board, a lot of people had an interesting discussion about Nickel, about Trout, and so on. The general belief is that he's your classic stretch four. Where does a lot of this stuff originate from?
Like I said, stereotypes.
No, I'm talking about his game, though. But his game, where does his game originate from? When you're watching him, is he a guy that, okay, he's not going to blow by people, but he uses that combination of footwork, enough quickness, and a little bit of body and gets through? Or tell us what his game looks like starting out in the perimeter and going in.
You take a look at some of the Big Ten fours, Kyle Young, some guys like that. Now I'm going to tell you now, he can go up and he can finish over the top of somebody. You'll be on the poster if you're not careful, because he can get up, he can play over the rim, but he's not a guy that's going to make a living doing that. He's just going to be sneaky and do it. But like you say, it originates even outside the 3-point line. I think he's more a 3-4, whereas Nickel's a 2-3. He's bigger than Nickel. He's a good 2 to 3 inches bigger than Nickel. And so he's that 3-4.
So if Jalen Washington is a 4,
Nickel, Trout can play the 3. Absolutely.
Play the 3 in that situation?
Yes.
But he can also slide down and play the 4 when Washington takes a break.
And like I say, I think he could do that and give him a break. And I think he's one of those guys that can absolutely do that.
Is there somebody in the ACC or maybe in North Carolina or in that region that he reminds you of?
I'd have to go back and think about it because I've really not given that any thought. But I'll say this. The one thing I would like to see, he had several 3-point opportunities and he didn't shoot it. He shot it okay. He didn't shoot it great. He winds it up a little bit. So in other words, it's not quick. It's not here and here, catch here, your elbow through, and it's just that motion. He gets it, and it's down. It's like he has it down around his stomach, and then he comes up and through. So he's bringing a ball up about that much, because you can't see here, about that much before he gets to his shoulder. So it's just a little bit, it's right here. It's just a little bit slower. He's got to speed that shot up. Now, I think as he speeds the shot up and gets it here, you cut down on your range of motion. I know you're watching a home run derby. It's got to be more, well, what do they do if they're trying to hit home runs? They have a longer swing. You look at Pete Rose and those guys like that from a past that were singles hitters that got over 3,000 hits, they had shorter swings. There was less margin of error. I think as he shortens his stroke down and it gets quicker, he's going to shoot with a higher percentage. So, but yeah, he definitely, now he's going to be a bigger three, but what he would have to do, in my opinion, if Jalen Washington, let's say he came to North Carolina, if Jalen Washington plays at 4, well, what's he going to have to do? He's going to have to improve that outside shooting because he's got to stretch the floor more. He can't be the guy that, well, how does he score? Because he puts the ball on the floor and gets to the rim, because you've already got a 5. You've already got a 4. It's probably going to do some of that. I feel like if you've got an outstanding 4 like Washington, who's very athletic and puts the ball on the floor, I think then you've got to have a 3 can shoot it. I don't think you can have both of them doing that.
Same question as with the other 3. How much do you see, for the sake of discussion, let's say he goes to North Carolina, how much do you see Trout contributing as a freshman?
A lot. I don't, you've got other play. And here's the thing you've got to remember. And I think Hubert probably starts doing that a little bit, where it's kind of social Darwinism. He's already shown that he will recruit. And I'm not going to say, I don't want this to be a verdict on Brady Manick, but I could see in the past, now correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Roy might have been a little bit, all right, we brought Manick in, we're going to go with that. And I'm not necessarily going to bring this guy in this late to play over him. Because I think Garcia could, I think Garcia is better than Manick.
Yeah.
So he's already shown, I'm going to put the best 5 I can put out there on the floor. So, we've already talked about Dontrez Styles, and you've got some other guys there. So there's going to be competition at those spots. So, and that's going to be the thing. So I think he could be very legitimate to come in, but I think there's going to be strong competition to play that 3 spot at North Carolina.
There's a lot of guys out there.
Yeah.
So overall, with the last 2, Nickel and Trout, is it too early right now to kind of gauge what you think is going to happen with the both of them in the next 6 weeks or so? Or how do you see this playing out?
There are a lot of guys at the Peach Jam event coming up. Now, we're not going to be there, all right, because
no access to the players.
Yeah, Nike's gone. Nike's full mask Nazi on us. So, it's really weird. Under Armour and Adidas, it was like, man, do whatever you want. So we got 2 rules, okay? Number 1, don't stand under the baskets during the layup line where some player might come down on you and tear an ankle. And secondly, I can't remember. If you're at Adidas and you tweet something out, you need to put the 3 SSB hashtag after every one, and then UAA hashtag for Under Armour. That was it. And the Nike deal, well, we got a quarantine, we got to do it, no interviews and all that stuff. And they're not letting the media in at all. They're letting a few select. So we're not going to get to see it. But, there's going to be a ton of North Carolina prospects there. So I want to see how that goes. We've not gotten to see the Nike guys here. So very, very interested to see how that takes place the next few weeks. And then we'll go from there, because these guys are going to set up visits. They're going to even more. They take senior visits. And I think then they start narrowing their groups after this is over with, I think July 27th. Then they start getting into recruiting. So it's going to be all AAU play right now and not necessarily a whole lot of recruiting. But I think we start getting back into it in August.
How much better do you feel about what you know about these guys now as opposed to a week ago?
I didn't get to see Jalen Washington play.
So you got to see him though. You got to be around him, and that goes away.
I would have liked to have seen him play. And then like I said, I would like to see nickel play more, but I feel like I've got a good beat on Shaver and on Isaac Trout. Nickel's the guy on that group that I'd like to see play more, and obviously I like to see Jalen Washington. We'll be watching him closely here at Peach Jam, and we're going to have results quite a bit here on Four Corners, so we're going to be keeping up with it the best we can.
And why didn't he play again? Was he just resting up for Peach Jam, and they were kind of taking it easy?
Well, they had 5 games that weekend, and here's the thing: we used to do this because we would get in these tournaments, and every tournament you went to, you were basically trying to win a championship game back in the day. Now they're basically just exhibitions. I mean, you have your schedule, and there's no championship games or anything. You know your 4 or 5 games you're going to play, and that's it. So they had 5 games in Atlanta, and, he had been from Thursday through Sunday. They're tired. You don't want to risk getting an injury. And like he said, this is just really a warm-up for Peach Jam. We used to do it. You'd have a 3-game pool play before you got into the brackets. So if we won our first 2 games, we wouldn't play any starters in that 3rd game because we knew we were going to get out of the pool. And the whole motivation was we wanted to see college coaches to see every player on that roster, because some of these guys, you knew Jalen Washington's going to go to North Carolina. Lee already knows that. Well, what about that 10th guy on the roster? He's there, and who knows, Wright State or North Carolina A&T or Wofford or somebody might see that guy and love him, and he ends up getting a scholarship, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Fantastic stuff, my friend. You did an awesome job.
I saw a kid out of, and I can't wait to see what happens to him.
He's on the 7-footer?
No, he's about 6'2".
Oh, okay.
He had a Western Carolina offer, and he had a South Carolina upstate offer, and he single-handedly won a game over a very good opponent. And he's like from the mountains of northeast Georgia, like that Georgia, South Tennessee.
Yeah.
He's east of Chattanooga. He's East Chattanooga in North Georgia. And I think that one game probably is going to end up getting him another 10 scholarship offers. So
quickly, before we sign off, you tweeted a couple of photos about a 7-foot freshman or 8th grader.
It was unbelievable.
What was up there with this kid?
He played for Brookwood Elite, and I'm looking at it on Twitter right now. I've heard somebody told me he's actually 7'3". So I looked at him and I went, good gracious, that is one of the biggest kids I've ever seen. And as it turned out, that was a 15 and under game. And I look at the roster, and they got the kids' schools down, and it was such and such middle school. And it was just, and I'm looking at it. And you know who was there? It's weird. There was one college coach. I'm going to give you the guess. There was one college coach there in the crowd looking at him. There was only one sitting in the stands. Who do you, for a 7'3" kid, who do you think it would be? By the way, his name is Oliver Roux, R-I-O-U-X.
Well, I'm just going to throw a guess out there and say Calipari.
No, Painter at Purdue.
Ah, there you go. That makes sense.
He got Zach Edey. He had Matt Harms. He had another one before he had Harms. He's had 3 kids in the last 5 or 6 years, at least 7'2".
Matt Harms looked like Morrissey, the former lead singer of the Smiths.
Yeah, it makes sense. That Matt Painter was here watching a 7.
Curiosity before we sign off here, was he good? Did he look like he could be a player?
It was hard to tell. He just basically, kind of stood in there with his arms up. So it's hard. Playing 15-year-olds, I didn't get to see him enough. It was just basically like, I've got to look at this for a minute. It's basically fascination more than anything else.
Wow. Curiosity factor.
Like I said, when I'm looking at all these players and I've got you wanting to do podcasts and now remember to put up notes and get these 4 stories up tonight. I don't have time to sightsee.
You got it, man. Hey, fantastic job. You did a great job on the trip, and I didn't push you too hard.
No,
I pumped the brakes a little bit.
Hey, you've got this is a livelihood, and I'm like you. There's one thing I like about you. You want to put the best product and as much of it out there as we can put. And I know that when we go look at this and we get to see this stuff, and you say, okay, we're trying to do stuff that nobody else is doing. So, we take pride in that one. I know you do.
Well, in your passion, I can sense your passion out watching that stuff, because you're a talent evaluator. And that's one of the things I absolutely enjoy about talking to you about this stuff, because it's deep within you. So it shines to your work. So much for all the compliments for one another. People are going to be disgusted right now.
Yeah, I did that at the end instead of the beginning. That
Absolutely.
We didn't lose everybody.
Yeah, they have to uncheck their thumbs up. But if you did like this podcast and you do like David's work, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. Jacob always reminds people to do that. Share it. I never do. So share the video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, go over to THIillustrated.com and sign up for just $8.33 a month, and you get to read everything David puts out. And he puts out a lot of stuff. You're going to have a ton of stuff coming this week. So thank you, my friend. Great stuff.
More on Dawson Garcia. We're going to have quite a bit about him this week.
Yeah, and we're still doing our look ahead series where we do a different basketball player each week, and we still have Manic and Garcia coming up in the next few weeks. But we're taking a little steering off to the side here with that right now, because we've got so much of this recruiting stuff that we're rolling out. So fun stuff, lots of stuff happening in basketball, football, and we're on top of it at THI. And David kicking some derriere. Thanks, my friend.
You're welcome.
He's David. I'm AJ. Thanks for stopping by.